and welcome to Arts Alive. This week we're at the Tate Gallery that has just opened its summer season with three exciting exhibitions: Jackson Pollock's Blind Spots, Ligon's Encounters and Collisions, and Geta Brătescu's first UK solo show. And to begin with, let's dive into Pollock's world of drops and splatters with this collection of more than 50 items from the period 1951 to 1953, an influential time in his career. While Jackson Pollock's is mostly famous for his colourful action painting, the Blind Spots exhibition reveals another aspect of his talent, as Gavin Delahunty, curator of this exhibition, told us.
The original idea for the exhibition I had whilst I was working here as head of exhibitions at Tate Liverpool, and the Tate have a wonderful work, number 14 from 1951, and one evening I was just in the galleries, we had it on display here, and I was looking at the painting and I thought, this is an amazing painting. And I just started to do research into this quite unusual period by Jackson Pollock, where he painted exclusively black paintings in 1951 and 52 and 53. That was really the genesis of the show. Between 1947 and 1949, really until 1950, Jackson had been making these all-over drip paintings for which he became probably the world's most famous artist. And then in the autumn of 1950, through conversations with artists like Barnett Newman and the sculptor Tony Smith, he decided to make a radical change to his practice. And that radical change was to reduce his palette, to strip the colour out of his palette, and to use only black enamel paint on raw cotton duck, so raw cotton material, and also to resuscitate some of the images that had been apparent in his practice prior to 1947. So it was almost like a very careful distillation of everything he learned between 1947 and 1950, and then repurposed in these very ghostly, powerful, dark paintings that he made in 1951.
Yeah, I mean, they look a little bit, obviously it's the color, but they do look darker though. It's not just the color, it's also the shapes.
Of course, I think it's very appropriate to say that, because the shapes have this kind of biomorphic quality, so bodies seem to emerge in heads and limbs and arms, and they're almost evocative of artists such as Goya or Picasso. And the exclusive use of black is also very curious. But if you look at Pollock's entire painting oeuvre, so from start to finish, black is actually the most dominant color that he uses. So we've tried to lay that out in the show. So with the first room, we chose a very careful selection of paintings that are from the period 47 to 50, but show how black was being used by Pollock until the tipping point in 1950 when he decides, I'm just going to go with black alone.
But then, since the essential of the artwork is black, why is the show called Blind Spots?
Well, the title Blind Spots comes out of the idea that we're very aware of Pollock's drip paintings, and they're so powerful and they were so radical and so important for generations of artists that it's caused a certain blind spot in our ability to see other aspects of Jackson Pollock. And those aspects include the black paintings, it includes his works on paper, and it includes his sculpture. And we've brought all of those things back together for the first time in Liverpool.
Exactly, yeah, because it's not just the paintings, like you were saying, there's work on paper and the sculpture as well.
Yeah, the works on paper are absolutely extraordinary. They're a little known body of work that ran in parallel to the black paintings in 1951. And we've pulled together an entire room of these works on paper, one of the largest ever assembled just for the exhibition. And then Pollock made a number of sculptures. Again, most people don't think Jackson Pollock sculpture, but he did make a number of sculptures in his life. And we have 4 of them here, and they're rarely seen, rarely understood. And if you look at them in dialogue with the paintings that we've selected here, you really get a sense that they're almost like Jackson Pollock paintings in 3 dimensions. And you can walk around them and explore them. It's like being inside a Jackson Pollock painting. They're really quite wonderful.
I was thinking as well, the fact that he turned towards this black and white, is it linked with a particular time of his life? I mean...
Yeah, it links with a very particular period in New York. So Jackson was someone who was hyper attuned to different shifts in what was happening in the art world in New York. And artists like Willem de Kooning, like Franz Klein, were using, Robert Motherwell, were using black and white paint. And Pollock was interested in this, and he was again, always someone who wanted to push the boundaries. He thought, how can I explore this further? And Pollock is the first one to exclusively use black alone.
Laying out canvases on the floor, Jackson Pollock initiated the all-over drip technique, a style which led Time magazine giving him the nickname Jack the Dripper in 1956. But the harmony in his paintings doesn't just come from dripping and pouring.
Yeah, I think that one of the, you mentioned earlier them being described as black pourings, and in many ways they are black pourings, and that title comes from another exhibition which was staged in 1980, and they had 11 of the black paintings. And Francis O'Connor, who is a very famous art historian and curator, he had decided, what is different about these? Well, it's not a drip, which is what he would been described and using in 47 and 50, but it's more about a pour, where he's pouring the black paint directly out of the can. But as you correctly pointed out, it's not just pouring either. He used the ends of sticks, he used dried paintbrushes, he even used a turkey baster to squirt black paint onto the canvas. So he's using a whole array of different tools to create a very strange process where it seems the lines are entangled and in conversation with one another and are morphing into one another. Without exaggeration, these paintings are unlikely to be in the same room ever again or for the next 50 years, and I think that it's just a really incredible opportunity to see them firsthand in the flesh for the first time. Many of the paintings have never been in Europe, let alone the UK.
An exhibition that shouldn't be missed, on display until the 18th of October. And if Pollock is considered one of the most influential artists of the 20th century, he certainly had an impact on another American artist presented alongside him at the Tate, Ligon. The exhibition Encounters and Collisions explores American identity through a wide range of artwork curated by Ligon himself as his ideal museum.
The idea was to juxtapose a small selection of my work with a much larger selection of artists that have been influences on me or of my generation, or artists I'm in dialogue with. So it's quite a wide range of artists going back to, I think, the mid-50s. The earliest paintings is abstract expressionist paintings by Willem de Kooning and Jackson Pollock and the like, and on through the present. So quite a wide range of artists, sort of reflecting the artists that I'm interested in. A lot of my work is text-based, so quotations from authors such as James Baldwin, Zora Neale Hurston, Mary Shelley, Walt Whitman. Usually in black and white, because that's often how we see texts in books. But it's also engaged with issues around kind of sexuality and race and kind of questions about language and history. But I think my interest in black and white also comes from early abstract expressionist paintings, particularly Franz Klein, which there's a beautiful painting from the Tate here, and he worked primarily in black and white, and he was a huge influence on me when I was a young artist. So maybe some of that black and whiteness of my work comes from that as well. You know, I'm an American, and so the history of black people in America has certainly been a huge influence on the work that I make, and so the work does touch on issues of race and identity, but it's also about language, and it's also about American history in general. It's also about painting issues, sort of formal issues around painting and repetition and seriality in painting and abstraction in painting. And so, but I don't see those things as contradictions. I see that, you know, all of the work that I'm interested in has a sort of, I think, a strong social component at its core. I don't think I make work in response to particular issues because those issues are ongoing. So I'm really interested in, for example, using the work of James Baldwin, an essayist that I like very much. He was talking about issues of social justice in the 50s, and some of the same language that he's using to describe the problems of America in the mid-50s can be applied to situations that we find there now. today. But I think the show is also about a kind of global sense. You know, an artist works globally, they think globally, they look at artists from all different kinds of cultures. And so the show is an attempt to sort of show that, you know, show the range of things that one is looking at when one makes one's own work. Neon is very, takes to letters very well. You know, if you go out in the street and look at shop signs, lots of them are in neon. So it's a familiar way to see text. And I think there's precedent for a lot of artists using neon. Bruce Nauman, who's included in this show, is one of my big heroes. But I think for me, I use neon as if it were sculpture. It's a sneaky way for me to start an investigation in sculpture, making things in 3 dimensions, as opposed to paintings, which are mostly flat.
After the break on Arts Alive, we stay at the Tate for a 3rd exhibition about the Romanian artist Geta Brătescu and her world of lines and collages. Welcome back to Arts Alive, where this week we're at the Tate exploring new summer exhibitions. From Jackson Pollock's Blind Spots and Glen Ligon's Encounters and Collisions on the 4th floor, we now go back down to the ground floor for Geta Brătescu's first solo UK exhibition. I spoke to Eleanor Clayton, who has curated the work on display and gave me a tour through the fantastical world of the Romanian artist.
Brătescu is a Romanian artist. She was born in 1926. She's still alive. She's still working today. She works every day in her studio, and she is an amazing woman. She was very talented very young. So even as a schoolgirl, she was chosen, her drawings were chosen to feature in an exhibition of secondary school's work, a national exhibition in Romania. And then she went to university in the 40s. She was expelled, actually, in her final year because the government changed and they wanted to get rid of people whose family owned property. Communist government came in, so she was expelled, but she continued drawing, she continued working as an artist as well. And she earned a living for some time as an illustrator. She illustrated novels, she did front covers for novels, really beautiful things in the 50s and 60s. She worked as a graphic designer for an arts journal and as an animator and did illustrated children's books. And then in the late 60s she returned to university. And at this point she became really interested in the studio. She said she recovered the studio and started thinking about it as a space to explore ideas of identity and the self and our place in the world, as well as sort of dematerialization and objects and what they mean. So this prompted a whole body of work in the 70s, and we have some of that here. But working on the show was really interesting because she had so many different bodies of work and worked with so many different materials over 60 years, because she still makes work today. So there's no way to sort of encompass all of that in an introductory exhibition, but I'm hoping that this will give UK audiences a brief, sort of fragmented introduction of high points over her career. So she considers herself as a draftsperson, as a drawer. Drawing's always been really important to her. And actually, when we first started talking about the show, we almost called it The Line, because Geta Brătescu The Line, because the line's so important to her. But the line is sort of manifested in lots of different ways. So whether it's the line made by her body performing in space, in the show we have some films of her performing, or whether it's the line made in textiles. So she worked a lot with textiles, and some of which she called drawings with the sewing machine. Or through the cutouts, the collages that she works on to this day. There's an ongoing series that we have here with some works that she made, just a few months ago, which she calls Drawing with Scissors. So although there's all these different mediums, actually the way that she thinks about them is very similar, and there's a certain consistency in the way she approaches all of these things. It's something that probably came from her initial interest in drawing. But I think the line has come to mean lots of different things for her. So it's about delineating things in space, you know, marking out territory. So there's a line that runs around the edge of my body, and that's my space in the world. And similarly, there's lines that, you know, everything can be divided by lines. It's how we kind of understand things. So as well as, you know, being interested in shapes and forms and, you know, a very aesthetic interest in how, you know, making something that's very beautiful, she's also interested in it conceptually in terms of how it relates to the way we think about ourselves and everything around us.
Amongst the wide range of artwork displayed in the exhibition, a large part is devoted to her work about Medea, the famously jealous wife of Jason and infanticidal mother of Greek mythology.
Geta studied fine art at university, but she also studied literature alongside it, and actually she's been a prolific writer throughout her career as well as an artist. And that perhaps gives some explanation for why she's been drawn to certain literary characters. And one of those is Medea. So she has made a huge body of work about Medea, who was a Greek character who famously killed her children to sort of take revenge on her husband who betrayed her. So she's a very interesting character because in some ways she's sort of an archetype because she's a mother, but she's very kind of the anti-maternal person. And we wanted to represent this body of work, which again is started off with drawing and then encompasses printmaking and works like this, which are these drawings with the sewing machine, very beautiful and intricate, sort of almost like craft work. It's quite interesting because of the relationship to feminism that Geta has as well. So as an artist working in the 1970s and working with textiles, a lot of critics wanted to label her as a feminist artist because there's such a kind of feminist attachment to textiles and that sort of domestic work. And she's always found this really problematic because she feels like feminism is a label, it's a uniform, is that in fact how she described it. And I think she's always been looking at trying to represent herself as an individual. She's very interested in, you know, society as a collection of individuals rather than as some sort of homogenized group. And that's something that we brought out in the wall text. So I worked with Geta to select certain elements of her writing. So there's an excerpt of her writings on feminism in this wall text about Medea, and the same with sort of the other texts in the show, so that as people come in, hopefully they'll get a sense of who she is as a person, as an individual, as an artist, and can understand through her words sort of the different influences and issues that she's been dealing with. She had seen the film of Medea by Pasolini, and she'd seen a theatre play of Medea as well. This is all in the 60s, so she said that the whole idea of Medea was in the air, and perhaps because it was a time for women breaking out of these roles, so it was something that was being picked up by different cultural producers. And she had seen these things, and she was flying over the Mediterranean, and she saw an island from above, and she thought that the shape of the island reminded her of the profile of the actress Medea, Maria Callas, who played Medea in the film. So she then drew that profile, or drew the shape of the island as Medea, and then sort of worked it through printmaking, and then this is kind of what you have here, is this profile with an eye. But I think it's partly showing the kind of the complicated nature of people as well. So it does relate back to, you know, the many different ways that Geta has expressed herself over this long life, is also kind of alluding to the fact that all of us have these different sides to our character, and none of us are kind of just one-dimensional people. One of the best things about working on the show was that I got to go and visit Geta in her studio in Bucharest, where she still works every day. What she's working on mainly is this body of work that I'm standing in front of now, which is called The Game of Forms, and she's been working on it since 2009. It's an ongoing series that she calls this drawing with scissors. And we thought it was important to start the show with these. So throughout the rest of the exhibition, you have these different grouped areas, which we're kind of calling these zones of osmosis. This is based on something that Geta spoke about, where she said all of the different materials she worked with and the different things she did, whether it was illustration or animation or fine art, they all informed each other. So they were kind of like zones of osmosis where they influenced each other. But we wanted to start with these because this is the work that she's making now, and she's still a contemporary artist. We also wanted to show them in this way that you sort of walk through a tunnel of them when you first walk in. And that's because this is how she has them in her studio. So it's a really amazing place where she just has hundreds of these cutouts that she makes every day, plastered up the wall, like just pinned on top of each other. And obviously we couldn't quite do that here because they're works of art in our care, but we've tried to sort of give some suggestion of that playfulness that she has with the sort of play of colour and lines as they leap around the room. We're really excited as well because for the show at Tate Liverpool, she actually made a new game of forms. So we have big windows that welcome you into the gallery, and she designed a kind of game of forms collage, but in vinyl that's now on the windows just above me. I keep looking up to see it. So it's really nice to have her make something specially for Tate Liverpool, but also to have something that's been designed just, you know, a month ago before the show opens. So we have works right from the beginning of her career right up to present today.
Alongside Jackson Pollock's and Glen Ligon's exhibitions, Geta Brătescu artwork will be displayed at the Tate until the 18th of October. That's it for this week. See you next time.